Matchday 32 of the Turkish Super League proved to be both very exciting and highly controversial. That means a lot of heated debate in today's episode of Football a la Turca. Thank you for downloading and enjoy the show. Due to popular demand, we are joined once again by Pat Cox. Pat, thank you for joining us, and of course, as our Dinger, we wouldn't have this almost celebration of Galatasaray's title without you, of course. But welcome both of you, and unfortunately, Burak isn't here with us. He's on holiday again. He seems to be doing that a lot. He has a lot of holidays to spend, doesn't he? And Umut isn't here either because he was having a blue screen of death on his computer, unfortunately. But Pat, thank you for joining us, and Özür, of course.
Me.
So let's talk some football. This is episode 13 of Football a la Turca, and I'm Kaan Bayezid, of course. We're going to be talking about match day 32 results in the Turkish Super League, and there's quite a little bit of development again, both at the top and at the bottom. I'll get this out of the way quickly. We have our first relegation, official relegation. We already alluded to it last week that would probably happen this week. Akhisar are the unlucky ones that will definitely be dropping down. And of course, later this week, they still have the cup final to contest for with Galatasaray. So it's kind of funny to see that our cup finalists are 100% guaranteed in the second division next season, but they may also be in the Europa League depending on the result of that cup final. But we'll get to their match a little bit later. We'll start on Friday with the Antalyaspor Bursaspor match. This is also a very important match in regards to that relegation dogfight because Bursaspor still very much in the thick of things together with Göztepe and Erzurumspor. And wouldn't you know it, Bursaspor pull out the rabbit out of their hat and get a win away at, well, now 7th placed Antalyaspor, but until recently 5th placed Antalyaspor, who have now back-to-back losses against relegation candidates, if I'm not mistaken. They lost last week against Göztepe, I believe. But now they lose at home to Bursaspor. The only goal in this match coming in the 16th minute through former Galatasaray central defender Aurelien Şecu. There was also a red card for Adi Sissoko. He got double yellows actually in the 57th and in the 71st minute. Gonna throw to you first, Pat. Very uninspired performance by Antalyaspor, who still have everything to play for with that cup final later this week.
Yeah, I thought it was an interesting result for sure. I didn't expect Bursaspor to get 1 point, let alone 3. So quite a surprising result in my eyes. Lots of talk on social media I've seen just about the circumstances of the match to some extent, because having looked at the highlights, it didn't look like Antalya turned up at all, really. And obviously this recalls to memory Trabzonspor's loss, in inverted commas, to Bursaspor a few seasons ago to send their rivals Rizespor down.
Mm-hmm.
You know, has something similar happened again, like a gentleman's agreement, or is it just that, you know, Bursaspor had the more fight to stay up? I don't know.
I don't know if you can really speak of a gentleman's agreement in that sort of circumstance when there's a third team that really gets screwed in the process, really. And I remember that match because Trabzonspor went up in that game, and then after they scored, it's like, oh, we did our job now, like with 1/3 of the match played, and then they just, it looked like they just completely, well, bend over, laid down, however you want to put it. I don't know if you recall that match, Özür. Do you remember the circumstances 2 seasons ago?
Yeah, it does. I do have a hazy memory of that incident that you guys are referring to.
Mm-hmm.
I was surprised that Bursa won the game, seeing just only the result. I didn't watch the match live, but then when I went to watch the highlights, I did kind of see a bit of a not reluctant, but let's say hesitant performance from Antalya, which didn't really make sense. Shedu scored what I thought was a pretty good header, but didn't really celebrate much, which was kind of curious. But I mean, look, if you ignore the context, for sure, Bursa deserved to win this game. They played much better than Antalya. They got just the one goal from Shedu, but they had misses from Aytaç, from Umut. So I mean, and their neck was really on the line in this game. So on balance, you can understand how Bursa were able to come away from this when you look at the highlights.
Yep, and the reason why there's a lot of suspect here, because on this podcast we don't really want to go into the conspiracy theories too much and stuff like that. But in certain circumstances, it's difficult to avoid, especially in these kinds of circumstances where you have betting odds that go dramatically down before the match, where the odds on Bursaspor, the away team that are struggling and are fighting relegation, against a team that are fighting for 5th place, that have had for all intents and purposes a good season, are still competing for a European ticket, and you see that Bursaspor, the odds are dramatically in Bursaspor's favor in this match. Bursaspor have struggled to score in weeks, have struggled to win in weeks, and that's those types of things let alarm bells go off. And if you then go and watch the match and you see the input, the dedication from the Antalyaspor players, or rather the lack thereof, those alarm bells only start sounding louder and louder. And then, of course, the memories of 2 seasons ago, what happened against Trabzonspor on the final match day that sealed Rizespor's fate that season. It makes it a little difficult to not have second thoughts about this match. Obviously, if you just look purely at the game and you don't really pay attention to all those outside factors, and you don't keep in mind all the things I just said, then you would think, oh, well, Bursaspor deserved that win. But it's very suspect that Antalyaspor seem to willingly be led to the slaughter banks, so to speak. Very weird to understand for a team that still have everything to... Motherfucker. Did you guys hear that?
Yeah, I did, yeah.
A fly.
Is that what it was? You're kidding.
It was a fucking fly, yeah.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
I was really curious as to what was just happening there.
That was a fly, yeah, no. So I tried to swat it away. Okay. So yeah, it's difficult to say. They're still in a tight spot, of course. Next week's gonna be the all-deciding match, I believe. Bursaspor against Göztepe. I mean, whoever wins that match is likely gonna stay up if there's gonna be a winner. That's a match that obviously you can't fix. I mean, neither team is gonna be willing to take that payday, that easy payday, so to speak, to go down to the next league. Next week's gonna be super interesting. But this one kind of frowning my eyebrow here, and I just implore people who haven't watched it, maybe go and at least watch the highlights. Those betting odds dropping, that's stuff that happens, and usually those are indicators of games being fixed, because that usually means that there's people who have preconceived knowledge of what's gonna go down.
Well, the moral of this story is that we should keep an eye on the dropping odds in matches before matches and put money on it.
Usually what it means is that there's a ridiculous amount of money being placed on the match,
exactly.
Usually from Asia or something, so then the odds go down. That's because then the betting companies notice that there's something going on there, so it's very, very suspicious. But let's move on to Saturday. This is probably going to be the biggest talking point of the match day. It's going to be the Çaykur Rizespor Galatasaray match for multiple reasons. One extremely unfortunate reason, and that's Emre Akbaba. Emre Akbaba is going to be out for at least a year, is what I'm hearing right now. He had a double leg break in this match. A very unfortunate incident. The Galatasaray player, of course, only just returned from injury not too long ago, and he had already been out for 5 months, I think, after, what was it, a hamstring injury that he suffered? Özer, do you remember?
It was just around October time. I can't quite remember the precise injury, but it's so sad that we have to start with this kind of tragic incident, because as you say, he could be out for 1 year. He could be out for longer than that.
Yeah,
and having already spent several months out, it's a real blow to his career. Emre is one of my favorite players in the team. Certainly my favorite Turkish player in the team.
Is that a joke?
I'm serious.
No. I don't know. I mean, I thought maybe you meant it as a joke because there's like just the one, you know.
Well, no. I mean, there's Selçuk, there's Yunus, there are other players in the team, but you know,
who play.
Even recent times is my favorite Turkish player that we signed because
definitely.
he's genuinely nice guy, and he's one of those who's had the boyhood dream of playing for Galatasaray.
And he
finally
gives
reached that
100% all the time.
Exactly. He's never involved in any controversy off the pitch, on the pitch, etc. So for this to have happened to him back in October, just before the Porto Champions League match, having played so well against Lokomotiv Moscow, I really thought this guy is the dynamo of our midfield. This is the guy who's going to send Belhanda to the bench, etc., etc. And it's such a shame that his season has turned out like this. I really wish him the best of luck to recovery.
That brace for Turkey as well, of course. And
he was
really hot at that time. Hit the ground running with his career at Galatasaray. I think he scored on his debut as well and stuff like that. And then for something like this to happen, so
it's really sad.
We're gonna get back to it in a little bit. Let's quickly dig into the match proceedings first.
Sure.
So Sufyan Figuli here, first getting the scoring started after just 9 minutes, put Galatasaray ahead. But Vedat Muric, the unavoidable Vedat Muric, he just keeps scoring. He can't stop. He equalizes just before halftime. Then it's Aminu Umar who puts the hosts in the lead just a couple of minutes after them seeing a red card for Brian Samudio. I think that was in the 72nd minute during Emre's injury. But then Mbaya Diagne gets the equalizer from the penalty spot in the 2nd minute of added time, and then he gets the winner. I believe it was the 6th minute of added time on the Sofyan Figuli assist there with a very good header from Mbaya Diagne. And Diagne also missed a penalty in the 38th minute. That was awarded following a foul during a corner, but some controversy there, which may cause the match to be replayed if Rizespor appeal. I think they did appeal, so this match actually might have to be replayed. We'll have to wait and see what the decision on that is.
That would be an absolute calamity if the game is replayed for that decision. I mean, that would be a real disgrace for Turkish football. In the same way that we're observing other disgraceful decisions made in Turkish society, that would be a real...
Well, given
the
way...
I would advise the TFF to do that, because they would have the wrath of 25 million fans behind them.
Well, first, let's point out that there were 3 really big decisions. 2 penalties and 1 red card, all in favor of Galatasaray, all against Rizespor, I would say. I think all 3 of them were wrong. So I would understand Rizespor appealing, and I don't think that karma-wise it would be unjust, because clearly Rizespor were dealt a bad hand in this match. I mean, let's first look at the first penalty. That was...
the penalty... Okay, no, go on.
No, go ahead. First.
Well, I was going to say that the referee... Okay, you can point to a couple of decisions that certainly went our way, and I'm not disagreeing with that point of that. But firstly, the referee should have allowed the penalty to be retaken, the one that Diagne missed.
Should never been given in the first place.
Well, it was given nonetheless, and Galatasaray missed the penalty, despite the fact that several Rize and Galatasaray players jumped into the box as he was stepping up to take it. So, if the rules are rules, then the penalty should have been retaken.
Yes, but the preceding rule, annuls that, basically. The penalty should never have been given, because the supposed fall, whether it's a fall or not, we're going to leave that in the middle, but the supposed fall occurs before the ball is in play, so therefore it cannot be a penalty. That's the rule. That's also the reason why this match could be replayed, because there's a kural hatası, a rules infraction, which occurred there. Not a
but my understanding is that the so-called appeal to replay the match is for the decision in the 90th minute.
No.
Which is
it's for the first penalty. You cannot appeal. There's nothing that you can't appeal anything on that penalty, because that's an interpretation of the referee. It's a hakem hatası. You cannot appeal that. There's not it needs to be a kural hatası, which is a rules infraction where the referee clearly gets the rule wrong, or the VAR or whatever, and that happened on the first penalty because the fall happened before the corner was kicked, and that cannot be a penalty because the ball isn't in play.
I don't think that's the case. The referee can still send the player off if the ball is off the pitch. In the same way that a referee
he cannot give a penalty there.
I've certainly seen referees blow for a penalty when there's a tussle in the box, when another player is waiting to take a corner.
Yes, if the ball is in play, he can give a penalty. If the ball is not in play, he cannot give a penalty. That's the rule.
But the ball is in play when the foul is committed.
No, because he was still lining up to kick it.
No, I think that's a very weak argument. I don't think TFF should replay the game because of this highly subjective observation.
It's not subjective; it's objective because the ball is not in play.
Well, I'm watching it right now, and I can see that the ball is in the air as the player goes down. There are 3 separate incidents in the box.
As the player goes down.
Well, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but the fall is not when the player is going down. The fall is when he receives a push or whatever.
It's essentially at the same time. The guy is pushed, and within the second, he's on the floor. So, from the angle that it shows, it appears that the ball is in the air when the push is made. On 3 different players, actually. There are 3 different players who goes down. So you could argue that each individual case should lead to a penalty in its own right.
Well, I think I've got the Bein Sport thing open at the moment. Yeah, and I can see the first person to go down is number 27, and he definitely goes down before, like he's halfway to falling down before the ball is kicked. But then to the very right of my screen, so I can't actually see when he goes down. By the time the ball is in the air, number, by the time I had 40 something,
45,
yeah, 45. It looks like he's then on the ground. But from the replays that from Bein Sport show, it suddenly then goes to a penalty. So I can't see when he went down or what that was.
I agree with your timestamp there, Pat, because 27, who's Luyendama, is sliding to the ground as the ball is kicked.
Yeah,
so we can say that he was exempt from that. But 45, who the referee blew for, was fouled while the ball was in the air.
Looking back, I don't know if even the first guy, I think he just falls over himself, so that probably wasn't the foul there. But I can't, unfortunately, it's a bit difficult to tell, and one's from behind the goal, so I can't see when the thing's being taken, and the other way, it's half the players are out shot anyway. But
So I mean, I think it's you can't say that the game you can't put a convincing argument forward to suggest that this game should be replayed because of kural hatası.
There's a rule infraction. If it gets appealed, the match should be replayed. That's
well,
the argument.
We'll see what the appeals.
I think we all know what the decision is going to be here already.
Well,
let's move on to then the next controversial position, the red card for Brian Samudio. Of course, we already discussed Emre Akbaba injury is terribly unfortunate, but that should not impact the referee's decision. And I think Umut was so kind as to send us a very close view of what actually happened, because unfortunately during the game we didn't get a proper replay of it. All we got to see was a little bit from behind the goal footage from very far away. But in the close-up you can clearly see that Samudio is lining up for a shot, is only looking at the ball, absolutely has no idea that Akbaba is coming in with a challenge. And he hits it with so much power, and right as he's about to strike the ball, Akbaba puts his leg in front of it, and he just it's very graphic. If you want to watch it, we could put it up on our Twitter feed and we can let you decide, but I'm gonna throw to you guys first. Özer, you're the Galatasaray man. What do you think? Is the red card justified?
Well, first of all, I think we have to establish whether or not there was any intent in Samudio's challenge there. And I honestly don't think there was intent. I agree that he was lining up for a shot, and Akbaba's leg, who was going for a sliding tackle, got in the way of his shot, and he was hitting the ball with such power, such ferocity, that it ended up breaking his leg. So it's an extremely unfortunate series of events. I don't think there was any malice in the tackle. However, from the referee's perspective, he's just seen a player get stretched off with a double leg break. So he's probably thinking, well, it's reasonable to assume that there's going to be a red card infringement here. So given the nature of the incident and the nature of the injury, I don't think a red card is totally disproportionate, but technically it's the wrong decision. I mean, there's a scale of bad decisions, right? Sometimes you see players get sent off when there's been no contact whatsoever. There was clear contact here, so much so that it broke Akbaba's leg. So while it's the incorrect decision, I don't think it's too much of an abhorrent one. We've seen plenty worse.
I think it's a terrible decision, but Pat, I'm going to let you make your point first.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you that there was no way that it was intent. I mean, from where he took the kick, it looked like he was just going to sort of do a long distance shot, which unfortunately ended up in a horrific injury. And my best wishes to Akbaba. I hope he has a good recovery. Young guy, so hopefully they'll be quicker than normal. And again, I'm no rules expert in terms of what there is, but again, if there's no intent, if it was just something where he did go for the ball, unfortunately someone got it in, is it red cardable? Like, there was no intent, obviously, with such a bad injury, and you could see the effect that it had on the players. They must have known how that it was bad before any X-ray or anything else. Again, that may have just had that impression to go over the referee. I just also want to compare and contrast to another incident in the first half, I believe, when where Ryan Donk comes on a bit of a challenge from a header, but then appears to, at first glance, kind of kick out at the protruder, only to kind of get in a bit of a scrap afterwards. My first thought when I saw this video was that, how did he only get a yellow card? Because it was a clear kind of deliberate. I guess when I had a second and third look at, there's someone kind of underneath him. So, naturally he was just trying to get up, basically. And if you can't call it intent, if it wasn't a deliberate kick, then it was just what happened. So I would say if that's going to be yellow because it's no intent, then a similar situation should have happened later on in the match. But the decision was taken ultimately and left Rizzo with a man down.
Yeah, there's a couple of different interpretations for when a red card is given. So, for example, with studs, referees are going to look at intent. Referees are going to look at when it's a tackle at the height of the leg, where exactly the tackle is placed. Like, for example, if it's placed ankle height or something, and it's a challenge for the ball. Usually it's not gonna be a red, it's usually gonna be a yellow, but if it's like higher, like shin or something, then it's usually gonna be red. Flying tackles, of course, are supposed to be red cards. But here the situation is different. It's not really about the intent, so to speak. Because obviously there's no intent, so it's not gonna be about intent here in this interpretation of the Akbaba Samudio position. The question here is excessive force or a reckless challenge. Now, both of those don't really apply because he's not challenging for the ball, because he's the player in possession. Akbaba is the player who is challenging for the ball, while Samudio is in possession and is lining up for a shot, has absolutely no idea of there even being a challenge for the ball. So this is never a red. And you can see that the referee is clearly being influenced by the outcome of the situation. But this is a wrong decision. And not even, I can see why. Because the referee has to put himself beyond that. Like, I understand, like, as a human being, why he decided to give him a red card. But in terms of... in the spirit of the game and just the rules, simply, this is never a red card because the player is absolutely unaware of Akbaba's challenge. He has no intent, like you guys did. It's a wrong decision in my opinion. and I think it can be factually
to be honest,
proven there.
We can debate the correctness of the decision all day long, and I think we're basically all three agreed that it's not a red card. But if I was the Rizespor player, Samudio, I probably wouldn't have wanted to remain on the pitch anyway,
and
having
you
broken
can
someone
see
else's
that
leg.
on his face
And
as he
doesn't
walks
even
off.
put up a challenge. Exactly. So in the context of the incident, I don't think it's that much of a terrible decision. The guy broke his leg at the end of the day.
Well,
the outcome is the magnitude of the outcome is so great that I think a little bit of empathy should be applied.
Yeah, but I think then you take off the player as a coach. This is not up to the referee. This is not his decision, so it is a terrible decision because it impacts the match, the proceeding of the match further. It impacts Rizespor's competitiveness. They are down to 10 players for 20 minutes or so, or all the remaining. That ultimately probably leads to their downfall in this match.
I challenge that on the grounds that after going down to 10 men, they went 2-1 up.
Yes, they went 2-1 up.
Challenge their competitiveness too much.
That's 4 minutes later. It's when you're down to 10 men. The question is not how will you respond within the first couple of minutes. It's going to how is it going to have an effect on your ability to cover ground later down the match.
I'm not sure that the psychology of that is. I'm not sure that if that's really the case. So many teams fold and collapse after going down to 10 men. It's rare to see a team go 2-1 up against the title challengers having just lost the match.
They scored almost instantly afterwards. The first
which
attack
is even more
following,
impressive, I think.
Yes, but of course it has an impact. This is like you saying last week that...
I'm not saying it doesn't have an impact. I'm just saying that the impact is not as great as you're saying.
Clearly it has a great impact since they end up losing the match. After the 2-2, then they don't have that extra man to put pressure on the ball on Fuguli, who swings in the cross, which was relatively pressureless, so to speak. So of course it has an impact further on their match and their downfall in the match. It's not a good decision by the referee because it's a wrong decision. So you can never...
let's move on. Let's move on to the even more wrong decision, which is the penalty at the end, because I know that Galatasaray are getting a lot of stick for the way in which this game was turned around, but everything should be examined in the context of the match in its entirety, and later for the whole season. I mean, let's get to the referee's penalty decision, and then I'll open up more about this.
Okay, so at a time we have the penalty position, of course. First we have the goal from Umar Aminu, who taps into the empty net, but then we have in the added time we have the penalty for Onyekuru. Not really sure what the penalty is given for there. The defender gets the ball out of clears the ball, and Onyekuru goes down, and there's a penalty. Even after VAR makes the referee go look, and the referee decides it's a penalty. I think even the most fanatical Galatasaray fan didn't agree with that decision. It was a weird decision. Yeah, I still don't know what the penalty was given for. So, yeah. I don't know.
Yeah. So on first, when I first watched this, I was shocked that the penalty was given, and I was even more shocked when it went to VAR, and the referee had a chance to view it for himself and awarded it nonetheless. And I wrote this during the match on Twitter that I was really stunned. It was never a penalty. Seen it a million times. I still stand by that. It not being a penalty. However, again, you've seen penalties given in Turkish League, in Premier League, in the Champions League for total dives. At least there was contact here between the Rizespor defender and Onyekuru. The contact which made Onyekuru lose his balance and fall to the ground. Was it a foul? No. Was it a penalty? Certainly not. But at least there was some contact to justify some of the lead up to that decision. So it wasn't a completely false decision. There was at least contact in the penalty box, which made the player lose his balance. But it definitely wasn't a penalty. I would never give that as a penalty or a foul anywhere on the pitch. But at least there was contact.
Yeah, but when we talk about context, I think it's also important to look at the importance of this call and how big it was. So that's also important to take into. I mean, we've seen poor penalties in the past, like we were talking about just a couple of weeks ago. The supposed foul on Mahmut Tigdemir, which saves a point for Başakşehir in the dying minutes against Rizespor, ironically.
Yeah.
And that was a terrible decision too. But I think you can there's contact there too. The funny thing is that he actually goes the other direction than where the supposed fall, then he should naturally fall into if it was an actual fall. But that's a discussion for 2 weeks ago. I think it's very simple to say here, this is not a penalty. I think all three of us are going to agree on that. I mean, Özür, I saw your tweet. You immediately said that's never a penalty. But yeah, it gets given anyway. Of course, Galatasaray are getting a lot of hate on social media because of it, and then you see the natural response of any, so in my opinion, the natural response of any fan of a club, you're going to start defending your own team. Like, obviously, I think if this would happen to Fenerbahçe, this would happen to Beşiktaş, Beşiktaş and Fenerbahçe fans would have the exact same reaction. But when we look at it, try and look at it from a more impartial standpoint, I think it's one of the more scandalous decisions of the season, right? Can we agree on that?
I guess you're definitely going to be up there. But I would like to see some consistency applied from rival fans when it happens to Galatasaray as well. I mean, let's remember the completely fake penalty against Konyaspor back in November during the season, which was, I think, in the 89th minute, Serdar Aziz clearly won the ball with a very elegant tackle in the penalty box. Referee not only awarded a penalty, but sent Serdar Aziz off for that as well, which cost us 3 points.
2 points.
Cost us 2 points. Well, it cost us the 3 points, and it cost us 2 points in the last minute, which was a completely scandalous fake penalty.
100% agree.
Let's remember when the referee didn't blow for 100% foul on Feghouli in the match against Fener, which immediately led to a goal, which again cost us 2 points in the victory, and had a huge psychological blow and stunted our title charge, which was going much stronger back then. So, I mean, it happens. The context of the season overall, we would not like to see any of these any incidents like these. But you could argue that they balance out, and we should always argue to try and be consistent for each other's clubs as well. I mean, I've tried to do that when it's happened to Beşiktaş and Fener, etc., to try and be objective as possible. And I was really disappointed to see this huge hate campaign coming out in the last 2 days for Galatasaray.
But I think context is king. I completely agree with you when you say that this evens out over the season, so to speak. But we need to look very importantly at the context, at the position we are in right now, in the middle of a title race. And this is not the first favorable call that Galatasaray gets in the last 4 or 5 games. Look, I'm not going to go into too much last week. I said my piece about that, but the referee there was one-sided in my opinion. Fine. The week before that, we had the Emre Akbaba red card that should have been given. I mean, very reckless challenge there. We talked about it a little bit earlier. Reckless, excessive force. And there's been that's 3 matches in a row already where you're escaping. Then you have the Thiago red card penalty, which was, again, that's all in the same match where Akbaba does not get that red card sent off. Then the Thiago penalty, soft second yellow, gets sent off. It adds up. I get the frustration, but I agree with you that when you say that things do even out. But at some point, there's decisions that I think this is like so bad. Like I'm consistent in this because I've said the same thing multiple times about that Konyaspor penalty, because that's my go-to when I talk about bad referee decisions. You cannot say that it's not the case, because that's my go-to example. I've at least used it 4 times in 4 different episodes. But these types of decisions need to be scrutinized, and I think especially now when it's so important. Come on, look, let's be honest. I understand I mean, do I still believe that Beşiktaş have a shot at the title? Of course not. Would I believe that Beşiktaş would still have a shot at the title even if Galatasaray had lost that match? No, of course not. I'm not there anymore. But I do get that there are fans who will cling on to that little bit of hope, and they then see, well, look here, Galatasaray probably would have lost this match if it weren't for that penalty. And because who says that late goal still comes? It changes the match. That's also a breaking point for Riza to concede that last grasp equalizer, and then you see obviously the 2-3. So for some people it's like, oh well, 2 + 2 is 4, but that's not how football works. So I can get certain people responding in the way of, well, you know what, I mean, if that penalty doesn't get given, it's a different story. Beşiktaş might still have a chance for second place, so I understand Beşiktaş supporters being frustrated there. Obviously, I'm biased in that, but I personally don't believe in those chances anymore, but whatever. But it is, I mean, it's also, for me personally, I want to see. I said after the match, before the Galatasaray-Beşiktaş match, I said, look, whoever wins this, I hope whoever wins it wins deservedly, without controversy, and whoever wins it, well, I hope that team wins the title because they'll deserve it. I don't think last week was without controversy. I had a bad feeling coming out of that match for double reasons. For one, because Şenol Güneş, so... At the end of the day, Galatasaray were the more willing team, but it's a shame that it does have to happen with some controversy surrounding. I think it would have been better if that match would have just gotten 1-2-0 with two 100% no scrutiny, just then it's easier to take. This is Turkish football.
Exactly. I was going to say. So we it's a shame for us because we end up talking so much about the referee, and when we watch football programs, we end up listening to commentators, analysts talking all day about the referee and not about the football. So maybe we should talk a little bit, just very quickly, about the game and about individual performances. Because personally, it was. I mean, it's easy to say when he scores twice, but Cagney's best game for Galatasaray, basically completely because of that last-minute winner.
That last goal.
Like it's the first goal that I remember in a very long time in open play. It's a header. It's a very difficult technique, and he manages to hit it on target, which is very impressive. And I think he really felt a massive weight come off his shoulders after scoring that goal, because you could see it. Yeah, his celebrations.
Because his celebrations of any other goal are like very Mario Balotelli-esque. Don't show any emotion, poker face. And this one, you could see the emotion.
Exactly. And I was very happy to see that finally. And I also want to make a shout out for Feghouli, who has, and we've been saying this week in, week out, but he's been adding so much more quality to his game, adding a lot of leadership and taking responsibility in games. Yep. He had 1 goal, 1 assist at the weekend, and I think he's been our most consistent performer of 2019.
100% agree.
Yeah. Hopefully he continues with that run of form.
So I'm gonna let Pat have his piece. I know he has a lot to say about this. I hope he won't break up. So if he does break up a little bit, I do apologize, but unfortunately I cannot fix that in post.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I guess the dust is kind of settled to some extent from the game. I mean, I don't know. I think at the end of the day, what's happened has happened, and we can argue until the cows come home, as the expression in English goes. But I just think, as you said, these things can kind of happen to any team, and maybe one season they happen to one team more than another team, or when it comes into a title race that everyone's kind of fighting for, and a particular number of decisions go in favour of one team, then rather than at the beginning of the season, I guess that the pressure's a bit higher on that. And there's as fans, there's nothing really we can do. We can just discuss, as we do here or on social media or on the thousands and thousands of WhatsApp groups I'm sure there are across Turkey and the world discussing this. But these things happen, and as annoyed as I was that day, and for me, I very rarely use social media or to some extent our WhatsApp group to kind of vent myself, but it got to that point where I was like, come on, really? Like, just the number of decisions that I guess helped the game. This could also be because if I'd known, I think at about the 90-minute mark, that there were 12 minutes of additional time added on. I definitely would have put a small throttle on Galatasaray to win, just to at least make some money out of a bad situation, which unfortunately I didn't do, and only regretted 5 or 10 minutes later. But I don't know. I mean, there's not really much you can do about it. As we will discuss, later on in this episode, it's going to be an interesting weekend next weekend. We can only really see what's going to happen then.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the big things as well is when rarely you can say that. I think you can, I'm sure people said it last week, Galatasaray won because of the referee. But like I said last week, look, Galatasaray won because they wanted it more and because Şenol Güneş was a coward. So I think that is superior to the ref there. I think sometimes it rarely happens. I really think that is the case here. Galatasaray did win this in large part due to thanks to the referee. Because 2 major decisions, I spoke about 3 earlier, but there's 2 here that really impact that final scoreline. Because with that red card and with that penalty, you're basically breathing life into them. You're giving them 2 lifelines in that match. Because of that, at 1-1, you're giving them the man-up situation, and at 2-1 in the extra time already, you're gifting them a penalty. Obviously, you still have to score that and everything, but this is definitely, the ref helping out a little bit. I don't think you can I don't think you can deny that, and I don't think Özür is denying it. But sometimes that happens. Sometimes referees, willingly or unwillingly, are going to help out a certain team.
Maybe we can just say that the guy's a human and he made a mistake. I mean,
yeah, he made 2 big mistakes. That's I
mean, it's not entirely impossible.
Of course not. I'm not saying he did it deliberately. I'm just saying, look, this was a very bad match for him, and it was unfortunately very one-sided.
I think we can agree on that. Yeah.
I do think that one of the big source of frustration as well is Özür, which for many people is that, I've seen a lot of Galatasaray fans go on social media as well. Of course, like I said, obviously they're going to start defending their team. This is normal. This is a normal human reaction. Everyone would have the same reaction. But I see a lot of, when this happens to Beşiktaş or Fenerbahçe, I don't see blah, blah, blah. But the amount of complaining a Galatasaray have done this season far surpasses any other club. I think we can safely say that, right?
I don't know about that. I think there's been a lot of crying from our opposition fans. I mean, we didn't have our
fans are always going to complain. Fans are always going to complain, but the complaining when it comes from the top, from the coach, from the board members,
I think in that case, surely it's Fenerbahçe who are top of that league. Didn't they make another announcement the other day in fact yesterday, 12th of May, something I don't think I actually bothered to read. There's been a lot of crying coming out of Fener as a way of deflecting their failure on the pitch.
Yeah, but when are they complaining about the referees and stuff like that? Like openly, the president's complaining about the referee, the coach complaining about the referee. This season, I'm not talking previous seasons. When Aziz Yıldırım was at the helm of the club, it was non-stop that stuff. But I haven't really seen Ali Koç putting pressure on the referees, because that's what Galatasaray have actively been doing ever since that Konyaspor match, and they've been doing it continuously throughout the season, putting a lot of pressure on both the federation and the referees, and in a lot of people's eyes that seems to be paying off right now. I know one of the biggest complaints that Beşiktaş fans have is that Fikret Orman doesn't do that. They blame him for not doing that. For example, they blame him last week for not making strong statements. I don't, by the way. I'm very much of the opinion that I don't want presidents getting involved. A coach is allowed to speak his mind, but that should be limited to the post-match interview, and he shouldn't be going on for 2 to 3 weeks afterwards complaining about the referee. Like, look, after the Lokomotiv Galatasaray match, Fatih Terim didn't even speak about the performance of his team. He spoke about the decision that happened, that the 17 teams decided to say, no, we're not going to support you in this, in trying to basically force referees in a position of after the Konyaspor game where, Galatasaray tried to get those 2 referees suspended. and then the 17 other clubs of the league decided, no, we're basically gonna say no. We're going to allow you to do that because it's going to create a dangerous precedent. And afterwards, after the 3-1 or 3-0 loss to Lokomotiv, all Fatih Terim was talking about was that, completely took us out of the moment. We couldn't concentrate on the match because of this and that. That's stuff that I've...
Sounds like crying. That's
what I'm saying. No, but I think that creates a perception with other fans, with rival fans, that now, for some reason, that is getting paid off, and I think that creates an extra feeling of injustice. Do you understand where I'm coming from, Azar?
Not really. In fact, if Galatasaray is suffering so much at the hands of the referee, and the club is making statements to address that and highlight that week in, week out, and suddenly the decisions are finally becoming more fair, then I think justice is being served.
But what do you mean more fair? I mean, you guys made a whole deal out of Fenerbahçe scoring out of a faulty throw-in, and then the exact same thing happened last week, where after a million replays, you still couldn't tell whether it came off Caner or the other player. So, and then it's not a problem. So that's kind of hypocrisy, isn't it?
Well, no, not really, because I'm saying fairness in the context of the whole season. In terms saying things are balancing out at least. So yeah, wrong decisions this weekend, but we've suffered a lot lately, and I'm ready to move on to the next game.
I don't really think lately you've suffered a lot. I think you suffered a lot early in the season. I think it's better to suffer early in the season than it is towards the final 5 matches when the trophies get divided. But unless Pat has something to add, let's move on, because otherwise this is gonna be too much. And all your hate mail can be sent to idon'tgiveafuck@gmail.com. This is an R-rated show, ladies and gentlemen. Let's move over to the Fenerbahçe Akhisar match, because this one fairly important too, because it does seal the fate of Akhisar. Fenerbahçe, of course, don't really have much to play for anymore. Although, quickly looking at the table, I'll do that while we're talking. But I think they might still have be in contention for that 5th place now because of Alanyaspor and Antalyaspor's ineptitude.
Sadly, not. I'd like to say yes. Malatyaspor. I think they won yesterday, if I believe, or the day before.
Yeah.
And that ultimately sealed pretty much. Fenerbahçe's fate in terms of not being able to reach Europe, which is a bit of a shame, but. What could you sometimes, they say?
Maybe it's best for them, though, next season, rebuilding, maybe not having that extra load of matches. Although,
potentially, yeah.
I do think that last season, I think it actually worked out in Galatasaray's benefit to have those 2 early games against Östersund, because it kind of shocked the team to wake up early, so to speak, so they were 100% ready when the ball got rolling for the season. But this match ends 2-1 for Fenerbahçe. Fenerbahçe take the lead here to Roberto Soldado in the 28th minute, and Nabil Durar scores a very nice goal from outside the box just 2 minutes later, making it 2-0. Eldar Barbosa continues his scoring ways for Akhisar and gets the only consolation goal for Akhisar in the 45th minute. Akhisar did play a decent game again. I think they were quite lively, but unfortunately for them, no points once again. There was also a VAR awarded penalty in the 41st minute for a handball. I kind of felt that it was ball to hand. It was from very close range. I know the hand was up a little bit, but felt a little harsh. And then, Akhisar are officially relegated now. So, just Pat, gonna let you have your say here. Your final conclusions. This is gonna be the one to last home game for Fenerbahçe this season, if I'm not mistaken.
So I think every victory is important. It's a shame as normal we didn't make it too easy for ourselves. I guess if we'd scored that penalty, it would have been 3-0 before half time, assuming that Akhisar wouldn't have then got their goal. However, 45 minutes of not knowing if we're going to get that winner or if Akhisar are going to get back into it made slightly nervous. Final 45 minutes, but that's Fenerbahçe for you. Ultimately a good victory, which sends Akhisar down to the first league. To some extent, bit of justice, because when we lost 3-0 to Akhisar early in the season, the Akhisar fans were chanting Fener Küme'ye, so Fener to the relegation zone, I guess. But it's turned around a little bit, unfortunately for them, and maybe we'll sort of warn their fans in the future not to maybe mess with us. But there you go. And yeah, ultimately sort of a victory, but slightly nervous. Obviously, not scoring the penalty meant, and then conceding sort of straight afterwards did lead to rather nervous the last 45 minutes in very classic Fenerbahçe style. But we managed to hold our nerve and grind out the 2-1 win. Puts us on 40 points, which would have been good. However, Malatyaspor's later victory did mean that we mathematically can't finish in 5th place, which could snatch a late European position. But we'll have to look forward to next season. The only thing for me, which has been on my mind throughout the season, is the 2010-2011 season. Not so much for us, but for Galatasaray. It was a season when they had a bit of a wobble and ended up, I believe, if I very quickly look, in 8th position with 46 points. Now, 46 points, if we do win our next 2 games, would be a figure that we'd match. Ultimately, we could finish as high as 6th or sort of somewhere in between. But I think just for the sort of, like, I wouldn't call it a moral victory, but a moral draw at the end of the day, we can say that, well, when you had your bad season, you got the same number of points as we did. So kind of balances out to some extent. And, then obviously, as will remember very well, because we were in the same room when it happened, Galatasaray then won the championship the next season. So,
those were the days.
Yeah, exactly. A few years ago now. But
quite a few lessons at that point.
Yeah, I think I needed a few more after the match to drown my sorrows. So, if we've got Erzurumspor away next week, and it'll be a tough game because Erzurumspor have been on a bit of a revival in recent weeks, and they know. I think that assuming that Göztepe win their game or even draw the game before, Erzurum will have to win to kind of stay up. So Fener will be against it, I guess. But final day, the season game at home to Antalya could mean that we do hit that 46 points, and at least for me, maybe some other fans, get that sort of equal standing with a bad Galatasaray season.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting point, Pat. I've just been looking at the tables as well, and you're right. If Fener win the next 2 games, it'll match that season from Gala. I think what makes it worse compared to 10 years ago, I think like social media has taken off so much, and we're all on Twitter, and we're all kind of taking the piss out of each other all the time. And it's been going on for months and months with Fenerbahçe. It's really added a lot of pressure onto the club. But also, the change at the top, Ali Koç coming in after such a long time with Aziz Yildirim. Suddenly, the whole Fenerbahçe Jamia is expecting Fener to go up a level. This is what they've been waiting for years. And suddenly, it's had a totally opposite effect, which has added another kind of psychological blow to everyone involved in the club. That's why it's been so difficult for them to kind of get out of this hole, I think.
Of course, yeah.
But that's a process, of course. You can't just...
process, right.
Yeah. And I think for that, obviously I can understand things, and there are lots of changes, both sort of on and off the field for Fenerbahçe. And, if we can get those 2 final victories, and regardless of where it sits us at the end of the season, we could finish 6th, which on paper isn't so bad. And like I said, if we can match that sort of symbolic 46 that Galatasaray got all those seasons ago, to some extent, I'd rather finish sort of on and up, regardless of how low that still keeps us, than to kind of peter out and not really do anything. And, actually, as we record this, Fenerbahçe, I think, is sort of in day 2 of their Fenerol campaign, which, in a completely different, a podcast for maybe the off season.
How much is that raised, by the way, so far?
Well, I mean, it keeps going up and up every time I seem to refresh Twitter. But, just in terms of the finances of the 3 big clubs, is just, Fenerbahçe seem to be the most open in terms of having to do things about it. I remember early on in the season when Ali Koç officially kind of on his, was it a Jamia Deslendirme.
But of course, it's also because it's the easiest for him because he just took over. That's the same as when Orman took over in 2012. It was very easy to say, look, well, this previous administration really messed up the club, and it's going to be difficult for us now. And now you see, for example, X amount of years later, Orman is less open about that. So you can only really judge it in like, let's say, 3-4 years when coach has had a while to try and right the ship, if he'll still be that open about
of course, things, yeah. Of course. I mean, just to finish off my point, and I don't want to hog the time too much, but I think in that context, for example, the economy in Turkey and the lira itself have seen sort of better days. So I think it's a lot, obviously, in a very short space of time. Let's say, not this is a real thing, but let's say 100 million lira debt, which obviously is not the case because that would be great because it's very small money.
3 billion.
Yeah, a little bit different. But that money, let's say 5 years ago, is very different to the figure it is now. I should be saying the other way around. Sorry, 100 million euros, for example, is a lot different when, let's say, most of the shirt and merchandise sales are in lira, ticket sales, all that jazz in lira as well. Whereas payments to players and other members of staff might be in euros. I think we're going to see a lot of changes in the background in terms of whether transfers or people sort of coming through the door quite quickly. I know, as I've been seeing on your Twitter account recently, lots of references to that 100 million euros for Diagne. Whether that will happen, might be a bit of a dream, but I'm sure he'll make a bit of a tidy sum. But
I'm pretty sure that they can sell him for a profit just because there's so many clubs who you just know are not paying proper attention.
Yeah.
The Premier League clubs, for example.
True.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see kind of who comes and who goes over the summer for Fenerbahçe because, not just for us, but for all the clubs really, because I think we are slowly but surely entering a new era where the likes of the Schneiders or the Van Persies is kind of a good memory that we can kind of share with the younger generation.
It's a difficult lesson though for Turkish culture because they do still. I mean, I don't think it'll be ever truly done. I think there will always be attempts to get those big bomb transfers, so to speak.
Sure.
They may not be of the level of Wesley Sneijder when he came because he was like 28 or something, and he's still really in his prime. I don't think we'll probably see those types of things anytime soon, but I think we'll still see a 32-year-old Valbuena or something like that. Maybe not for the 4.5 or 4 million euro contracts, but 2.5 million is still a lot of money for a lot of players.
Exactly.
I don't know how that exploded so suddenly because I remember just in the beginning of the decade, 2.5 million in Turkey was a lot of money for a contract. And then we saw that slowly shift where even the Turkish players, Selçuk, Burak, were the first ones, I think, that started making close to 3 million a year, which was really extravagant. But it all came with the success too, because you did get those big players, Sneijder, those heavy paid foreigners, and then of course the good Turks are gonna want to pay raise too. I think we're seeing a little bit of a negative trend since the early 2010s in those wages, because from the mid 2000s to the late 2000s to 2010 or so, 2.5 million was pretty much the ceiling that you would see. That was like the best paid player in Turkey would earn 2.5 million. Now, just not even a decade later, we're seeing 4.5 million quite frequently. Pepe last season had 4.7 or something. Negredo had 4.3. Gomes had 4.3. We see now Feguli, I think he's on 4.5. Valbuena is on like 4.5 or something. We see a lot of these really big 4+ million contracts, even though the economy, as you said, has not improved at all. I mean, the economy now in Turkey is worse than it was in 2010. Unfortunately, and that's going to make it only more difficult for these types of things. These Fener all campaigns. I think in 2010 that would have been a lot more lucrative.
Sure,
obviously. You know, and we're seeing also now next season the shirts are going to be 250 liras, and fans are up in arms, like they feel like they're getting priced out. They can't afford these shirts anymore, or at least they can only maybe afford one shirt, and many of them are just not going to buy it out of principle, and they're blaming the club, they're blaming the president, the board. Like, how can you do this? 250 euros. But what people also need to keep in mind, these shirts are still produced by Nike, they're still produced by Adidas, they're still produced by Puma, whatever. And if you look at the euro value, that has pretty much stayed around the 35 to 40 euro mark for over a decade. They're making a lot less on these shirts in Turkey than they are on a shirt in Belgium, so to speak, or a shirt in Holland, where these shirts are close to 100 euros a piece. More than double the price that they're getting for the shirts in Turkey. And these are still conglomerate companies. These Adidas, Nike, they're gonna they want the profit. Obviously, a Galatasaray, a Beşiktaş are gonna sell a lot more shirts than an Anderlecht are going to sell, than even an Ajax are going to sell. You know, no matter how popular Ajax is, Ajax are not going to sell 500,000 shirts in a season. But that's something Beşiktaş, Galatasaray, and Fenerbahçe can aspire, and Beşiktaş last season broke the 500,000 shirt cap. That's pretty high up there if you compare that to other big clubs in Europe. Many, you know, if that would be, let's say, an Italian club that sold 500,000, they would go up in the next echelon of the next tier of how much money they're going to get the next time their contract comes around. But for example, a Beşiktaş, Galatasaray, Fenerbahçe are never going to be able to get a 10, 15 million euro a year sponsorship deal with Adidas or Nike, simply because the economy in Turkey doesn't allow those shirts to bring in that much money. It's not prudent for those companies. End rant, sorry for that, but I did want to pick in on that. Anything left to add, Pat, on the Fenerbahçe performance?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was obviously a couple of good moments, but yeah, it would have been nice to at least score that third goal just to calm the nerves. But I think it's just, you know, the final push, like I said, to trying to get those two final victories just to finish off the season, maybe on a bit of a high.
On a high note. Yeah.
And then, you know, look forward to seeing what's going to happen over the summer.
Okay. Let's move over to another very important match. This one, again, for the relegation zone. Göztepe Sivasspor, a goal-scoring festivity, so to speak. 3-3 at full time. Emre Kılınç here putting the visitors ahead after just 8 minutes. Deniz Kara, again, he keeps on scoring for Göztepe. Maybe he started scoring a little bit too late, but at least he's scoring. Gets the equalizer in the 10th minutes. Then Berkan Emir, unfortunately for Göztepe, scores an own goal in the 33rd minute. But Cameron Jerome makes it 2-2 in the 54th minute, and then Mohamed Demir from a free kick makes it 2-3 in the 80th minute, but Göztepe got back into it as Axel Ngando made it 3-3 in the 82nd minute, but again, Cameron Jerome involved in that goal there, the Cameron Jerome effect, as Burak likes to put it. Of course, his connotations are a little different. But there was also a red card here for Wallace Reis that came just before the free kick goal from Mohamed Demir. I think he got a second yellow there, but I didn't note the time of the first yellow. And Mohamed Demir scoring out of the resulting free kick. We haven't seen much of Mohamed Demir.
He was a very kick.
Hot commodity a couple of years ago when he was at Gaziantepspor, and he went to Trabzonspor. He was a very highly rated young upcoming striker, just like Cenk Tosun. They were coming up at around the same time, similar age. But we kind of seen him fade away in the last season or two. But this very good free kick, as Pat pointed out there. Deniz Kara had also a goal disallowed when the scoreline was 2-2. That was for offside. VAR showed that was a correct decision. We also had Alparslan Öztürk hit the crossing when it was 3-3. That could have been the 3-4 because Andre Castro taps in the rebound, makes it 4-3 for Göztepe, but again ruled off for offside. So Göztepe are going to feel very unlucky, are going to be disappointed that they only got 1 point, but they keep 1 point ahead of Bursaspor in the standing. But really, these home games are where Göztepe kind of had left themselves hanging a little bit. I'm going to throw to you first, Özür, because I know, and everyone knows by now, that you have definitely some affection for this club.
Absolutely. Anything red and yellow, and I fall straight for it. But Göztepe, yeah, I mean, what a game this was. Really thrilling match. Actually, Sivas' second goal, if I quickly move to Sivas, was absolutely class. It was such a fluid move, really like oozing quality. It was like watching Brazil video from the 1970s. It was really impressive. But Göztepe were able to pull it back, and 3-3. Jerome with 1 goal and 1 assist. Alparslan's shot that you referred to earlier was really impressive. The commentator almost lost himself. I think we can establish that he is a Göztepe fan himself. He looked like it sounded like he'd lost his voice after screaming Alparslan, and then realised he'd hit the post. He kind of calmed down a little bit. I think Göztepe had 2 goals disallowed as well. So altogether, it just shows how really hungry and up for it they were in front of their home fans. And 3-3 is not a bad result for them, because it means that everything is nicely poised for next weekend's finale against Bursaspor. And well, we all know who I'll be supporting in that game.
Yeah, and we know, of course, if Göztepe were to win that match, they will be safe, because then they would move 4 points clear of Bursaspor. No, actually, I'm telling a lie there, because depending on what Erzurum will do against Fenerbahçe, but if they beat Bursaspor, Bursaspor are relegated.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, Bursaspor will be relegated, and then it just depends on what Erzurumspor do against Fener. But obviously, last chance match is a must-win for Bursaspor. A draw there doesn't really help either team, really, but it helps Bursa less because they're still a point behind. But then at least will probably go down to the wire. Just quickly gonna throw to you, Pat. What's your expectation next week of that Bursaspor Göztepe match?
I don't know. My early prediction would probably be a draw. I think both teams are going to be fighting it out, and ultimately they'll sort of cancel out their efforts. I think, despite the colours, I do like having an Izmir team in the Super League, and I think Bursaspor were very lucky 2 seasons ago when Trabzonspor didn't play the best game against them and sent Rizespor down with a loss. But yeah, just looking at the stats, Bursaspor have had lots of draws in this season so far, 15, which I think looks like the most number of draws equal with Konyaspor, just to give a bit of fact checking. Only 6 victories compared to Göztepe's 10, and Göztepe are actually the team with the least number of draws, actually, with only 4, suggesting their games go either way a bit more, doing a bit of a Tottenham. However, yeah, I think with their energy, I think Göztepe might just be able to see that Bursaspor have been quite lucky the last few games, and I think Göztepe will capitalise on that and take 3 points.
Yeah, let's move on to the next match then, unless, Özür, you want to have a quick say on the next big match between Bursa and Göztepe?
I'm going to keep my prediction out of this one because I don't want to jinx anything, but I'll definitely be enjoying that game.
It's going to be
all eyes are going to be on that match. Yeah, for sure. There's 2 big crackers next week.
Yeah. Yes.
I mean, it's almost like it was pre-written in a script.
Yeah.
But we'll get to that later. Sunday we have on Sunday we had Kayserispor against Kasımpaşa. That one ended 2-1. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this one. Goals here came from Siam Ben Youssef, who opened the scoring for Kasımpaşa in the 26th minute, and a double by Asamoah Gyan, both with his head in the 74th and the 79th minute, clinched the 3 points for Kayserispor following a David Pavelka sending off. He got sent off in the 43rd minute for Kasımpaşa. Seemed a little bit harsh. Does either of you have anything to add to this match, or can we just move on, because this is a pretty unimportant match, does not affect anything at the top or at the bottom?
Yeah, nothing really apart
no
from...
offense to Kayserispor.
Yeah, nothing really to add apart from Asamoah Gyan, who scored 2 really delightful headers. And let's not forget that Asamoah Gyan is playing for Kayseri, which is quite a headline in itself. Yeah,
which we all forgot, because he's had a couple of matches where he plays there, but then he just seems to disappear in obscurity again. He's been outshone by Umut Bulut, let's be honest. The 36 or something year old Umut Bulut has consistently been keeping him out of the team, and deservedly so, because Umut has been good for Kayserispor.
I believe he's injured currently though, so I think wish him a speedy recovery too, because he's a great guy.
For sure, and let's move over to Konyaspor Trabzonspor. This is a match that does still have an importance in the league table because Trabzonspor, of course, still pushing for third place. Of course, they want to play one less round of qualifying football, especially if Galatasaray win the cup. I keep coming back to that, but then third place would be directly qualified for the Europa League group stages and would not have to play any qualifiers. So that is rather important if you want to avoid that early summer or a shorter training break, so to speak. But this one ends 2-2. Konyaspor holding Trabzonspor to a draw, or the other way around, depending on how you look at things. Hugo Rodallega had gotten the scoring started here in the 11th minute, but Jens Jonsson with a fabulous strike equalized in the 17th minute, and then Morike Fofana made it 2-1 for Konyaspor in the 45th minute following a Nate Skubic goal. And I wanted to point that out there because I know I've been riding him hard a little bit. He's not been performing at the level we've gotten used to him the previous 2 seasons. But then Jose Sosa equalized from the penalty spot in the 79th minute, and that clinched the point for Trabzonspor. And that makes it, with Beşiktaş winning today, we're going to get to that later, but that makes the gap 4 points, meaning that if Trabzonspor do not beat Beşiktaş next week, third place will officially be for Şenol Güneş and the Black Eagles. So important 2 points that they drop here, following also their 2 points dropped against Fenerbahçe 2 weeks ago. Trabzonspor kind of letting up in these last 2 away games, but they still have a chance next week. They'll have to beat Beşiktaş and then hope that Beşiktaş cannot win their final match at home against who are they playing at home? Kasımpaşa. Right. So it's going to be tough for Trabzon to still get that third place. I think their hope should have probably been for Trabzonspor, it should have been on Beşiktaş maybe dropping points and them themselves doing the job, but they couldn't get it done. Konyaspor with a decent performance, and we were talking about Konyaspor 2 weeks ago or so with Burak, and it's funny because we were kind of criticizing how bland they've been in the second half of the season, how disappointing they've been. Last season they go and win 2-4 in Alanya, and now again they play a decent match at home against Trabzonspor. They scored 6 goals in the last 2 matches when before they didn't seem to be much interested in scoring goals. But Özür, you've said it a couple of times already, you're pretty confident that Beşiktaş are going to finish third. I don't think your opinion probably has changed despite their loss last week, has it?
No, it hasn't changed. Trabzon drawing 2-2, kind of a choppy performance. I think Beşiktaş third, Trabzon fourth is a fair appraisal of the season. Johnson scored an unreal goal for Konya in this game. Definitely recommend our listeners to check that out on the Bein Sports website. Trabzon's young keeper, made some great saves as well. Rodallega could have had a hat-trick.
And Yusuf was great again, I thought.
Yes, absolutely, yeah. Trabzonspor Yusuf, yeah, absolutely great. But I have to say that he's a lucky boy because he received 1 yellow, but the tackle just before, definitely deserved a yellow too. So he gave a big handshake with the ref at the end of the match, which I thought was a bit of a sign of his relief. But very lucky boy there.
Yeah. Pat, what is your idea of this Trabzonspor? Do you think they can be a contender next season?
I think it's going to be harder because it seems like every week there are new rumours in terms of which European side are going to be going into the squad and picking their sort of wonder kid or sort of favourite, really. So I think it really depends on the first 11 or the squad that they have come August, really. And Trabzon, they've always been sort of up there, but they do suffer when their key players sort of get taken by bigger clubs, whether it's Burak Yilmaz a few seasons ago or
Burak, Selçuk, Egemen, all at the same time, basically, for rival teams. But I think that's going to be less of an issue now. I think it's unrealistic for Fenerbahçe, Beşiktaş, Galatasaray to go after a player like Yusuf, so it's going to have to come out of Europe.
Yeah, of course, like whether it's, even sort of middle table Premiership teams linked to sort of some of their younger players, for example, or, larger teams.
Yeah, look at Umut in particular.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see what happens. I think they've had a good season. Haven't quite been able to finish off, I guess, in the way that they wanted. But like you say, with the potential third place being even more important, should things go, I guess, the way of the odds. sort of, in the upcoming few weeks, I guess, with the cup final. But yeah, they've been sort of showing a few moments of sort of great individual talent, and I guess if when it comes to their bank balance, it's going to be a good thing. But do they have the sort of the depth to be able to replicate that, or have their scouts been doing a good job to pick who's going to replace them for a bit cheaper? We'll see.
The one thing I do really want to point out, and the thing I like about Trabzonspor is something that I am, for example, tonight I kind of liked when I was watching Beşiktaş, is the joy on the faces of the players. They're enjoying their football a lot more. I think for Beşiktaş, the players probably kind of checked out following that derby defeat last week. It kind of ended the season for them. There's a couple of exceptions, but the body language of the Trabzonspor players, despite the fact that they at this point probably won't be making third anymore, it's still possible. But I do like that enthusiasm we see with a lot of younger players. But even a guy like Hugo Rodallega, who's like 34 years old, he's still very much enjoying his football. Always so gleeful, happy when he scores a goal and contributes to the team. It's nice. It's fun to see, I think.
Yeah.
But let's move over to that other title contender, Başakşehir. For a while there, it looked like things were going to go south for them against Ankaragücü when Tyler Boyd, who else than the unavoidable Tyler Boyd, puts the visitors ahead after 17 minutes. A very interesting goal and just another classy goal, really. I don't know if it was a little bit of luck or it was class, but Tyler Boyd, once again getting on the score sheet, puts the visitors ahead. And that's the score at halftime, too. And I think a lot of people start thinking, oh boy, are they going to drop points again? Are they going to fumble it again? But almost immediately out of the gate, Riyad Bayic finally gets a goal because he's been getting quite a lot of minutes this season. And it's difficult to grasp because he's been, in my opinion, quite poor. He never seems to score. He's never really involved in goals. He seems to be losing a lot of the duels all the time. And then you see what they have on the bench with Demba Ba, with Adebayor. And still Riyad Bayic is getting picked over those two most of the time. But he gets on the score sheet here just a minute into the second half. And then Robinho makes it 2-1 in the 62nd minute. There was a very interesting little handball position here that was conveniently ignored by the referees. I don't think it was included in the highlights either, but I did see Özür, I think you tweeted that one out, didn't you?
Yeah.
The handball situation for Başakşehir here.
That's right. Yeah. It did look pretty clear to me from when I was watching, because I watched that game live. So it was a very questionable decision from the ref.
Yeah. Indeed, and when we're talking about controversial decisions and consistency, we have to apply that here too.
Yeah.
That was another one of those, and that's not the only one, because there's another couple of things here in this match where a couple of those Başakşehir players were on a yellow card, and a lot of those players were getting saved, so to speak, for the derby and starting on the bench. I think Irfan Can might have started on the bench, quite a few, because it was like, oh, they're starting with the B team. What's this all about? But obviously they're saving their best. They don't want to get those players that are risking at a yellow card and to get a suspension against Galatasaray next week, because it's obviously the big final. There's a couple of even in the highlights you could see it, but throughout the match, and this has kind of been a thing that's been bothering me about them throughout the season. Really, a lot of those positions where you're, well, that's a clear yellow card, and it's fine that a referee misses that once or twice, but if it consistently happens week in, week out, where players like Irfan Can is one that jumps out to me a lot. He makes a lot of those yellow card types of falls and gets away with it a lot, and that's those things add up, because take for example a Caner Erkin. He gets booked if he looks at you wrong, and that ends up in, I think he's got like 8 or 9 yellow cards already this season. I'm not saying it's undeserved. That's fine, but I think when we're talking about consistency, Özür was talking about it earlier, I think we see a lot of lack of consistency when it comes to yellow cards in particular, which those suspensions add up to. Those suspensions can become important when you miss an important key player in a particular difficult away game or something. Those can always be decisive on the 34 match schedule on the season. And I kind of felt in this match we had that penalty position, but then we also had a couple of falls where I was baffled at the end of the full-time whistle that Başakşehir didn't get a single yellow card, because there were at least 3 or 4 positions where they should have gotten a yellow, a clear yellow, not like, oh, it could be a yellow. No, that has to be a yellow. Do you agree with that, Özer?
Yeah, I do, and I think that certain players have kind of a reputation that precedes them. We've seen that with Quaresma as well. We've seen that with Burak Yilmaz and his diving that he's sometimes rightfully, sometimes wrongfully accused of. So I guess these players build up a certain amount of baggage over time that they have to carry around with them.
But that's curious then, because then you see a guy like Emre who you would expect to have that baggage, but he can do basically anything he wants.
Yeah, it's interesting. Emre's an interesting player in many ways.
Great player too.
Yeah, fantastic player. Without doubt, the best Turkish midfielder still, even at that age. I mean, sometimes he gets away with it. But then again, I think back to, I can think of a few high-profile red cards that I've seen him given. Not excluding one against Galatasaray a couple of years ago when he was at Fenerbahçe. The famous tongue-out response from Felipe Melo is what springs to mind when I think of that. But going back to your initial point there about consistency, it's not really fair for a player to be punished for having a reputation as being a foul or a tackle or whatever if that individual circumstance didn't warrant a card. So yeah, it's just another example of lack of consistency.
For sure. Pat, did you happen to catch that? I think you saw that that handball situation that Özer tweeted. Özer, at what scoreline was that, by the way?
I can't say off the top of my head. I can't remember now. I feel as though I would have tweeted it while they were losing, though.
So, Pat, what did you think of that handball? Was it a deliberate handball, or was there enough to warrant a penalty?
I think this goes back, all the way to the beginning of this episode, where we obviously, as you were talking about things going certain ways, certain games. I guess one of the most frustrating things when we do talk about decisions from the referees is, at times there doesn't seem to be sort of too much consistency in terms of the direction goes. And, I think for me, seeing that, and let's say being as honest as I can remember, again, probably most of the time, if most refs had seen that sort of on average, for example, they probably would have given the call. It just so happened that this week, either they didn't see it or, it was missed somehow or whatever.
I think that feels kind of like one of those things. If that happens in the 5th minute of added time and it's Başakşehir who need a goal, that's going to go to VAR. That's going to go.
Sure.
The referee's going to watch, and that's going to get a penalty awarded, because that's the type of. I think they've gotten penalties for less in the last 5 or 6 weeks. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but ultimately, again, it's something that when the season finishes and one team are champions, another team aren't. I was going to say one set of fans would be angry or not, but then I remembered who's kind of playing here. But a couple of people might be. Well, I guess it's more teams of other fans who don't want one of those teams to win would be a bit more upset. But football's football, I guess.
And it's interesting as well that the Başakşehir president, for the first time, I think, really spoke out after the match, and he was saying something along the lines of, "I have full faith in my players for next week's match, but I don't have faith in the external factors that have been plaguing Galatasaray's matches the last 2 weeks."
Please give me a break, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, I mean, he's getting involved. I mean, I don't really know why, what the point is there. I don't think there's much pressure that he can put on the referees. There's another person who could, though. Let's hope he doesn't get involved again.
Let's.
But But yeah, Başakşehir get the win, turn things round, and keep the thriller going, because obviously both teams are on 66 points with that win for Başakşehir and the earlier win for Galatasaray. That means it's gonna go down to the wire. But next week, we will, if there's a winner next week, we will know who's the champion. Because regardless of who wins next week, that team will win the league.
Yeah.
Because they're head-to-head, because they drew the first match. So if there is a winner, the only way we don't know the champion next week is if it's a draw. But if there's a winner, if it's Galatasaray, they're champions. If it's Başakşehir, they're champions. So it's going to be a very exciting match. It's going to be a very intense match. I don't know if that's something that people are realizing yet, if that the title will more than likely be decided next week, with still 2 matches to go, because it's so close right now. But even though mathematically Galatasaray, if they would win and Başakşehir would lose, they could still end on level points. It's just the head-to-head will be in favor of whoever wins, because they drew the first match. So next week, it's all on the line. It's going to be a super fun match, I think, to watch for the neutral. And let's hope that there's no controversy in this one. Let's hope there's not a position where, oh, the referee handed that game to this team or that team. Let's hope the best team wins next week, and that I think whoever wins that match will deserve the title, because regardless of what we're scrutinizing here in terms of well, you know, this penalty, or Başakşehir are getting the favorable decisions, Galatasaray are getting the favorable decisions. At the end of the day, you're looking at the 2 teams that have been most consistent throughout the season. I think Galatasaray, if you make the argument, like even Beşiktaş fans, and I'm speaking as a Beşiktaş fan, I think Beşiktaş have been good in the second half of the season, and based on that, they had that little claim to the title, but their first half of the season was so terrible. That they really that's not. You have to look at the 34 matches as a whole, and if you play such a bad first half of the season, it's almost impossible that you're going to win the title at the end of the ride. Galatasaray didn't have a great first half of the season, but they were consistent. More consistent now in the second half of the season, the first half of the season, but still, they've been consistent throughout the season. They've never been truly really bad. They've never been truly really good. I think they've always operated at a level of maybe mediocrity, because I do think that whoever wins the title this season is going to be a mediocre champion, whether that's Galatasaray or Başakşehir. Because I said it before, Başakşehir 35 points first half of the season, kind of mediocre. They've had their slip up in the last couple of weeks, which makes their second half of the season that had been very strong up until then kind of mediocre. So but whoever wins the title, those 2 teams have been the most consistent teams vying for the championship since day one until the end, and I think whoever wins it will deserve it. Would you gentlemen agree with that? Regardless of how you feel about Başakşehir as a club, you have to look at the effort put in by the coach and those players who do deserve credit. There's not their fault that they play for a fake club.
I totally agree. I mean, a few weeks ago, let's say at least a month ago, before Galatasaray were really back in the race, we were saying that these guys off the pitch, they have a load of baggage, tons of issues, but the football that they're playing deserves to be applauded. You've got guys like Edin Visca, who I still think, irrespective of who wins the league, by the way, I still think he should be the most valuable player in the league. In terms of contribution, he'll be the MVP. I think guys like Emre Belözoğlu, who lead on the pitch in terms of his leadership for the rest of the players, in terms of his physical presence, in terms of how he's looked after himself, in terms of his ability. He's an example off the pitch, and sometimes behaviour on the pitch too is obviously something else. But purely in footballing terms, excellent player. They do have a really great squad. So, yeah, I agree with the sentiment that whoever wins will deserve it, subject to any controversy next week. Yeah.
And that's why I'm saying let's hope there's no controversy.
Yeah,
let's just hope that the best team. Yes,
exactly.
Yes, please. Indeed. Let's move over to the next one, and we'll quickly gloss over it. Malatyaspor beating Erzurumspor. Again, Erzurumspor in a position where they have to win. Malatyaspor, with that win, probably clinched themselves 5th place, because they're now 5 points ahead anyone else. So they're more than likely going to finish in 5th. And based on their first half of the season, you could say that is deserved. Their second half of the season has been very wonky, but that applies for everyone except for Trabzonspor, Beşiktaş, Galatasaray, and Başakşehir. I think anyone has been rather wonky, except for, Rizespor, but they came from so far behind that it was just too difficult for them. But from those teams vying for Europe, they've been the least bad. Erzurumspor dropped 3 points, and doesn't really help them. Obviously, it's never going to help them, but they're still in a decent position with 32 points. They with a win, with 6 points in the next 2 games, they could still save themselves. But I think they're kind of going to have to hope for a draw next week between Bursa and Göztepe, and then finish the job themselves against Fenerbahçe, and then again in that final match day. So they don't have it all in their own hands anymore. Both Göztepe and Bursaspor do have that luxury that as long as they take 6 points, they'll be sure that they stay up. Erzurum will have to rely on those two to slip up. Goals here coming from Daniel Aleksic, which is one of those men of the season for me. He's a standout performer. Even Malatyaspor, who have faded in the second half of the season, Aleksic continues to be one of the players to watch. Then TV Bufuma doubled the scoreline in the 62nd minute. That goal was sandwiched though by a disallowed goal by Gilles Sunu for a handball. Rashad Mohamed pulled one back in the 75th minute for the visitors Erzurumspor, but Ömer Şişmanoğlu sealed their fate in the 90th minute and made it 3-1 to Malatyaspor. And with that win, like I said, Erzurumspor doesn't really change much for them. Their fate is simply no longer in their own hands, guys, and we know we're gonna lose at least 2 of those 3, Bursa, Göztepe, and Erzurum, and at the moment it looks likely that Erzurum is going to be at least one of those 2 that are going to drop down besides Akhisar. Does either of you have anything to add to it, or shall we just quickly move over to Monday to Beşiktaş against Alanyaspor, which won't take too much time either because, again, not a too important match anymore since we're mainly looking at the relegation battle and the title race.
Nothing to add from my side now.
No, man.
So I do apologize for Erzurum and Malatyaspor supporters who are listening to this that we don't spend more time on their match. But let's move over to Beşiktaş Alanyaspor. Still kind of continues to baffle me a little bit that Alanyaspor are forced to play. I think they should have gotten a couple of weeks off maybe. Although maybe for them it's best to just get this over with and then clear their heads and go on a couple of weeks vacation, and hopefully the players can do exactly that. But this match ends 2-1 for Beşiktaş. Goals here coming from Adem Ljajic in the 11th minute, an own goal by Caner Erkin in the 44th minute, and a rarity from Ricardo Quaresma from outside the box in the 55th minute, something he used to be famous for scoring long-range efforts, but he doesn't seem to try it too often anymore. Beşiktaş win this match 2-1. They squandered quite a lot of chances at the end. And the main things to take away here, Alanyaspor, actually had a goal disallowed after just 4 minutes. I believe it was for offsides after a VAR intervention. Yeah, it was offside after VAR. Was in contact there with the referee. What has to be said, I think the body language of most of the Beşiktaş players, I think a couple of them, Ljajic was still giving 100%, and that's something that's to be commended. But I think, for example, Burak Yilmaz, very instrumental in that first goal, but throughout the match, I think he was playing a little bit more his 1v1 versus Tsavelas. He seemed to be in the Greeks' back pocket for most of the match, struggled a little bit, didn't seem as hungry as he had been in previous weeks to get on the score sheet. There was one moment in particular that jumped out to me where Adem Ljajic they were on a counter. Ljajic was basically face to face with 3 defenders. Burak was with him, and instead of going deep, Burak decided to drop off, and that seemed just kind of told the match for me at the time. I thought, oh, does he have an injury or something? Why isn't he going deep? Because it's usually the thing that Burak would do in that sort of situation. But it kind of felt like he wasn't 100% motivated. Maybe he didn't want to be too engaged in the match because he wants to play next week against Trabzonspor and didn't want to risk getting a yellow card. You also saw that in those one-on-one battles with Tsavelas, he was having to control himself and to not lash out in order to not get booked. So he was trying to keep his temper in check, I think. But Tsavelas really had a good game against him. Ultimately, Beşiktaş wasted a lot of chances. Alanyaspor also got a couple of half chances. At the end of the day, it's 2-1 for Beşiktaş. They, like we said before, third place seems safe for them. Second place seems out of the question for them. Their season is kind of over at this point. It looks like 2 more matches, but I think the players especially will be wanting to move on to next season. And the more important news is not coming out of this match, it's coming off the pitch. Fikret Orman re-elected for 4 more years as Beşiktaş president. He didn't really have any serious opposition in yesterday's election, so that was to be expected. But one thing I do want to point out, I have from a very good, reliable source of mine, who is close to Mircea Lucescu, that Lucescu will... there's a big chance... What words? Let me just quickly check his words exactly. What his words were. But Mircea Lucescu will more than likely be Beşiktaş's next coach for next season. Let me see. The words, very close were the words. And I have been in contact with this person for a couple of weeks about this. And then he has his ear on the ground, and it's very reliable. And it looks that the former Turkey, former Beşiktaş and former Galatasaray coach will reprise his role as Beşiktaş coach for the next season, maybe 2. Obviously, I think it's going to be more of a transitional thing, as Beşiktaş are also kind of in a difficult position. And I don't know what your thoughts are on that, guys. Quickly, briefly, just a couple of minutes, going to get your thoughts on it. Özür, you first. Is Lucescu the right choice for Beşiktaş?
Well, he knows the club, he knows the fans. He comes from a lot of success from his club career, of course. I think he was a colossal flop as Turkey coach. I think not only did he get bad results, but his heart just never seemed to be in it. And I could never tell if that was because he was coaching a national team and he didn't have regular football, or he just given up with football altogether. So his time at Beşiktaş will illustrate which of those was the case.
It might define the end of his career, so to speak.
Pretty much. And to be honest, if he comes in as a transitional period, if you mean that insofar as he's going to come just for a couple of years and then retire, then I don't necessarily think that's a good appointment for Beşiktaş, because he won't take the job as seriously as someone who's looking to kickstart or develop their career.
Yeah, Pat, what do you think?
Yeah, I think it's always a risk with let's say veteran managers, elder statesmen, or whatever you want to call them. Because I think there are lots of younger, let's say, managers who who've done the time at the Anatolia clubs, who are in a position maybe to try and ply their trade in one of the bigger clubs. But obviously, Turkish football obviously can sometimes have provide long careers for some managers, but month-long tenures for others. And it might be that he's out the door before we know it, or he's there. He's doing a terim and he's there for a few seasons.
Yeah, I mean, Terim, of course, he's 10 years younger or so. It's still a little bit of a different situation.
But by the way, I wouldn't be so quick to write Beşiktaş off from second place, because if Galatasaray win on Sunday, then and Beşiktaş assuming win as well, there'll only be a point between it leading into the last game. So Beşiktaş could be demoralised after losing out on the title. So anything could still happen.
Probably counts for both, but I don't know if Beşiktaş are going to win against Trabzon. Honestly.
Yeah, that's the thing.
I think because of what I saw today is, I think it would, at Beşiktaş at least gotten a point last week, and the dream would still be kind of alive. They still had something to play for. I think that would put that in a different dimension, that match. But now I think you're going to have a very motivated Trabzonspor who, like I said, are still playing with a lot of joy, and they just want to finish the season on a high note. And I think for Beşiktaş, it's kind of like they kind of checked out already. I don't know if, from what I saw today, I saw some enthusiasm from some players, like I said, like Adem Laic, but it's going to require a motivated Burak Yilmaz and such, and just players playing 100% attention. There was some lapses of concentration today as well, with poor back passes and stuff like that. So that usually doesn't bode too well. But just quickly about Lucescu, the reason why I think it's a at least a decent decision is, I think the club is in a position right now where giving the reins to a young manager is going to be detrimental for that person. I think you're setting that person up to fail. I think that the situation is just too difficult with players not getting properly paid all the time, with transfer budget being small. What's going to be the team next season? I mean, Adam Ljajic is a lone player. Is he going to be retained? I mean, he's so important for the team, but are they even going to be able to retain him? Shinji Kagawa is a lone player. Obviously, he's not been made that important now, but he's a player that should be very important for the team, and I'm confident that whoever comes in next and who doesn't seem to have that bias for other players or against certain players. When Shinji Kagawa is gone, that's going to open new perspectives, especially for a guy like Kagawa, and I think we all agree that that's a quality player that you should probably still be building around, despite the fact that he's already 30 years old. I think he can still go for many years. I mean like 3-4 years at a high level. I think with that in mind, it's you don't really know what's going to be Beşiktaş next season. Yes, you know Burak Yilmaz is still going to be there, but Burak Yilmaz without a Ljajic to feed him, without a Kagawa to feed him, with Quaresma probably leaving, he probably should leave, but, you know, and then the wing situation. Beşiktaş are a question mark still for next season. I think it's tough to bring in a young coach. Let's say you give Guti the reins, and then you don't really give him a proper squad to compete with. A young coach, it's very difficult for them. I think you're setting them up for failure, and if they don't fail, great, but the chances of them failing are a lot bigger. A coach with a lot of experience like Lucescu, look, if he fails, too bad, but his legacy is already there. His career has been made. I think he's a lot less afraid to fail than for example a Guti or a Sezgin or whoever, and that could be detrimental for those young guys' careers just purely from that point. Look, if Beşiktaş were in a better position as a club, I would wholeheartedly say, look, it's time to move forward as a club. We need to get a coach that can be our coach for the long run. Then I would want a younger person, but I think for now, I think a transitional coach is probably the way to go. Not saying that Beşiktaş cannot compete next season. That completely depends on how that squad ends up shaping up, just like it does for Trabzonspor, just like it does for Fenerbahçe, and Başakşehir too. They might be going through a transitional summer these coming few months, because look at the average age of their team. But I think that's gonna do it for this week. We spent a lot of time on Galatasaray. We spent a little bit of time on the rest. But we
gave the people what they want.
Indeed. Well, people really seem to enjoy our debate last week. So let's just quickly look at the bottom and the top of the table before we close down the episode. But at the top of the table, we already said it earlier, 66 points, co-leaders right now, Galatasaray and Başakşehir. Obviously, Galatasaray have the better goal differential, but that will only come into play should next week end on a draw. If there's a winner next week, regardless of who it is, Galatasaray or Başakşehir, that team will be crowned the 2018-2019 Turkish Super League champions. Beşiktaş are in third place with 62 points, 4 points behind the joint leaders, and then we have a 5-point drop off to Trabzonspor, who are on 57 points. So even if Beşiktaş lose next week against Trabzonspor, they can still secure their third spot if they win their last match. Obviously, they would have to win, because if they draw and Trabzonspor win, then they would end on level points, and Trabzonspor will take it on head-to-head. So Beşiktaş still aren't out of the woods yet for third place, but they still have a slight chance for second place too, as I already pointed to. Then let's drop down quickly to 10th place. There we have Fenerbahçe. I'm just mentioning that quickly because they've been at the bottom of the table for so long this season, but as Pat pointed out, they're slowly climbing into the left side of the column, so just one more spot and then they're on the left side of the column.
Getting closer.
They're on 40 points right now, level points with Çaykur Rizespor and Kayserispor. Now let's move down to the bottom of the table, where it's truly interesting. We have 3 teams still vying to stay in it, and that's Bursaspor and Göztepe and Erzurumspor. Göztepe on 34 points, Bursa on 33, and Erzurum on 32. So those next 2 matches will be deciding if Göztepe win then Bursaspor are relegated next week, but of course it is in Bursa, so we will see. Next week, the two big matches to watch are, of course, Galatasaray Başakşehir and Bursaspor Göztepe, but there's also Trabzonspor Beşiktaş, which will be interesting, and Fenerbahçe Erzurumspor Fenerbahçe, sorry, it'll be in Erzurum. So those are the big matches to look forward to for next week for matchday 33 of the Turkish Super League. I think that'll do it for this week, guys. Got a lot of editing to do here because we had some technical difficulties, unfortunately, but I want to thank both of you, and I want to thank the listeners, of course, for listening, and I hope they'll be back next week for what will probably be the conclusive match day for a lot of things, both at the top and the bottom at the Super League, guys. Uzar, thank you, and Pat, thank you very much for jumping in and subbing in for Burak.
Thank you very much, guys.
Okay, well, we know this wasn't the funniest episode this week, but hopefully you got a laugh out of us fighting a little bit, and no hard feelings, of course.
No,
we love each other really.
Yeah. For those of you who are listening, if you feel aggravated, feel free to shoot us on Twitter, or that email address I mentioned earlier.
Oh yeah.